Let's talk about special angles. So let's start from the x and y coordinate axis, and next we are going to draw the unit circle. A unit circle is a circle with radius 1. If we draw the circle here, unit circle is this circle has radius 1, 1 because that's the radius of the circle. Okay, and our y, the length here is also 1. But here is the negative x-axis, so the value of our x here is negative 1. And for our y, down here we have negative 1. And this is our origin, 0, 0. Okay, now let's proceed to the special angles. We know that the whole circle is 360 degrees. So half of 360 degrees is 180. Now let's list down the special. 180 is one of the special angles. And then half of 180 is 90 degrees. So I will write it here. It's 90 degrees. And if you divide 90 degrees by 2, then you will have an angle of 45 degrees. So this is our 45 degrees. Okay, there you go. That's 45 degrees. Now another special angles are 30 degrees and 60 degrees. So let's consider that as our 30 degrees, and this one is our 60 degrees. So this is 30 degrees, and this is 60 degrees. Okay, these are the special angles in our first quadrant. So this is our first quadrant, quadrant 1. This is the second quadrant here. Next is the third quadrant, and then the fourth quadrant. So it's the anti-clockwise rotation or counterclockwise rotation. Now let's do the other special angles in the second quadrant. So let's start from the 30 degrees of our second quadrant. This is called the reference angle. So the reference angle in the first quadrant opens from the positive x like that, and just like this. Okay, I'll show a small demonstration here. So the reference angle in the first quadrant, it opens from the positive x-axis and there, and you form the angle from here. And then for the second quadrant here, the angle opens from the here. Okay, it's considered as the initial leg of our triangle angle. And then for the third quadrant, it opens from here. So basically it starts from the x-axis, and the fourth quadrant over here. So these are the reference angles. On the second quadrant, we'll construct the angles like in first quadrant here on the second quadrant. So that means we will make our 45 degrees here, and also the 30 degrees here, and the 60 degrees of the second quadrant. Okay, considering the angle opens from here. Now we'll continue the measure of our angle up to 180 degrees. So we start from here. If we start here, okay, that's 180. So the angle here, we subtract, since this is 30 degrees, so 180 minus 30, that gives us 150. Okay, this is 150 degrees here. And since this is 45 degrees, so 180 minus 45 degrees, that's 135 degrees. And for the 60 degree here, that's 180 minus 60 degrees, that gives us 120 degrees. You can also do it in this direction, since we know this is 30 degrees. So 90 plus 30 degrees, that gives us 120 degrees. And we do the same to the third quadrant. We draw the 45-degree angle here of its reference angle. That's 45. And then the 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees here. And then the 60 degrees of the fourth quadrant. Okay, there you go. Now, continuing our angles. So we know this is 30 degrees, so 180 plus 30 degrees, that gives us 210 degrees. And then this is 45 degrees, 180 plus 45 degrees, that gives us 225 degrees. And this is 60 degrees, so 180 plus 60, that gives us 240 degrees. And we move on. This is 30 degrees. Okay, so 240 plus 60 degrees, that gives us 270 degrees. Okay, moving now to the fourth quadrant, we do the same. We divide this into its reference angles, the 45 degrees. And then the angle opens from here, if we consider the reference angles. And then we have the 30 degrees and the 60 degrees. All right. Now we can continue. This is starting from here. This is 30 degrees. But you know, this is 360 degrees. All the circles, one revolution of the circle. So 360 degrees. And this is 30. So 360 minus 30, that gives us 330 degrees. Now we can also do it here. Okay, so 270 plus, we know that this is 30, 270 plus 30, that gives us 300 degrees. Okay, you can also have 360 minus 60, that gives us 300, it's the same. Now, next here, the 45 degrees, so 270 plus 45 degrees, that is 315 degrees. Okay, so these are our special angles, and of course this is the angle here is 0 degree from the beginning, and if we made one revolution, that gives us 360 degrees. Now moving now to the terminal points. So the terminal points here, this is our angle, right? So the intersection of our angles and the curve, our circle here for the terminal point here is this one. So if we get the value of our x here, okay, so this is the value of our x, and make a rectangular coordinate, get the value of our y here. So they have special values as well. For our x, special value is square root of 3 over 2, and for y we have 1/2. Okay, so our x, okay, this is our x and y coordinates, gives us our x is square root of 3 over 2, and our y is 1/2. Okay, now this is where the function, the trigonometric function, comes up. So our x here is actually the cosine, okay, the cosine theta. Since our theta here is 30 degrees, so x equals cosine of 30 degrees. And cosine of 30 degrees give us the x value of our terminal point here, which is square root of 3 over 2. And for our y is the sine of 30 degrees and gives us the value 1/2. So the sine and cosine functions, they are the basic functions in trigonometry, and these two basic functions derive also the other functions like tangent, cotangent, secant and cosecant functions. All right, now moving to the other special angles. here, our 45 degrees, special value for this, our x value is square root of 2 over 2. And our y, since this is half of the quadrant, so it's half of, they have the same x and y values as well. So the y value here is the same, that's square root of 2 over 2. Okay, and for 60 degrees, so it's just like 30 degrees but in reverse. This time our x is 1/2 and our y is square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so this terminal point here gives us x 1/2 and y is square root of 3 over 2. This terminal point here gives us square root of 2 over 2 and square root of 2 over 2 for our y. So there are only three numbers that you need to remember: square root of 3 over 2 and square root of 2 over 2 and 1/2. That's it. So it's just a mix of these three according to the given angles. Now let's move to the second quadrant. So we know this is the 45 degrees. Let's start from the 45 degrees with the second quadrant. So since this is 45 degrees, the x value here and the y value here is, it's going here. So the y value is square root of 2 over 2, because that's 45 degrees, the same value as here. But our x is square root of 2 over 2. They're the same, right? But this is already in the negative x-axis, so the sign is negative. Now for the 30 degrees or 150 degrees, in a reference angle this is 30 degrees. Okay, but okay, let's consider 150 degrees. Okay, the x value is the same as the 30 degree here, which is square root of 3 over 2, except that this is in negative x-axis. And then the y value is 1/2. Okay, same value as our 30 degrees here. And for the 60 degrees of our second quadrant in the reference angle, that's actually 120 degrees. 120 degrees. So the x is, okay, just like in 60 degrees here, the x is 1/2, but this time it's negative 1/2 because it's negative x-axis. And then the y is square root of 3 over 2, since this is in the positive y-axis. So you can continue the same process here in the third quadrant. Let's start from the 45 degrees of the third quadrant. So same value of our x, which is negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, and our y is, again, this is in negative already, y-axis, so this is negative square root of 3 over 2, just like in the 45 degrees of our first quadrant, but this time it's negative, it's a negative axis. And let's move on to the 30 degrees of the third quadrant, which is 210 degrees in standard angle. So the x value is given by, it's not so clear here, it's negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and the y value is negative 1/2. Okay, and the 60 degrees, okay, 60 degrees, the x value over 60 degrees is negative 1/2. And it's just like in 60 degrees here. Okay, it's the y is square root of 3 over 2, so the same is true here, square root of 3 over 2, but it's in the negative y-axis. And now let's move to the fourth quadrant. Let's begin from the 45 degrees of the fourth quadrant. It's square root of 2 over 2 over here, and then our y value is negative square root of 2 over 2. And it's moving now to 30 degrees of our fourth quadrant, or 330 degrees in standard angle. Okay, the x value is square root of 3 over 2, this one, and the y value is in negative 1/2. And then for the 60 degree of the fourth quadrant in the reference angle, and the standard angle is 300 degrees. So the x value is 1/2, and the y value is negative square root of 3/2. So this is our special angles. Now you need to remember that the sine and cosine function of a given angle is just the value of our x and y here from our terminal point. So say for example in 240, what is cosine of 240 degrees? So cosine of 240 degrees is just the x value here, which is 240 degrees, that is 60 degrees, right, of our third quadrant, or in standard angle, that is 240 degrees. So that is negative 1/2. Okay, that's the x value. And for the sine of 240 degrees, okay, that's the y value, which is negative square root of 3/2. So these are the special angles where you don't need a calculator to find the value of your sine and cosine as long as your angles belong here. But if the angles do not belong here, then you can use the calculator or other methods. I'd like to add the terminal points from here of the x and y axis. So for this one, we know the x here is 0, okay, for our 90 degree angle. The x is 0 and the y is 1. So that means the cosine of 90 degrees is 0 and the sine of 90 degrees is 1. And for this terminal point here, the angle is 180 degrees. So the x value is negative 1 and the y is 0. So that means our cosine of 180 degrees is negative 1 and the sine of 180 degrees is 0. So here, the terminal point here, which has an angle of 270 degrees, gives us, okay, the x is 0 and the y is negative 1. So that means cosine of 270 degrees gives us 0 and the sine of 270 degrees gives us negative 1. And finally, for initial point, this terminal point, which is an angle of 0 degree or 360 degrees, the x value is 1 and the y is 0. That means the cosine of 0 degree or 360 degree is 1 and sine of 0 degree is 0.